So before we start building this into a form in Grasshopper, I'm just going to reduce this frame down, or try to. There we go. And I will move it over here and grab my hand tool. And I also wanted to point out that we could actually manipulate these shapes using what's called a gumball. I didn't have it turned on before, but if you turn this on, you see we get the same kind of arrows that we would have had in Dynamo when we were making adaptive, or actually in Revit when we were making adaptive components. This gives us a little more flexibility with how we might want to manipulate these shapes. They'll stay rigid to the XY Z plane, so to speak. So anyway, you can have a little fun with that. Okay, so now I'm going to bring Grasshopper back up to the screen and talk a little bit about this idea of lofting. And lofting actually goes back to the idea of shipbuilding, the idea of drawing out large shapes and then connecting them to create the shapes of hulls, as a matter of the way we fabricate very complex curvilinear shapes. And so that lofting, Rhino was really good with that, and that's what really got its popularity with architects, that ability to create those curvilinear surfaces, because they were doing it already with boat hulls. So anyway, that's the little history of the idea of the loft function. I'm going to double click here. It's double clicking now in order to search for something. I'm going to look for that loft term. And it's down here at the bottom. And we can also search it just as we would. Now these are closed down. They've got surfaces. So if I was to go under surfaces, I can see that actually find that lofting. And this is I think a much nicer way to search for componentry as compared to how it works in Dynamo. So anyway, we need curves, and it allows for some kind of options to be put in that idea of lofting it. And so I'm going to go back to the idea of primitives. And we're going to figure out a way to get those curves in. So if I click on primitives, these are input geometry functions, and I click on curve and place that on the screen. And now if I right click on this, it's going to open up, I think it is, yep, there it goes, and allow me to set multiple curves. And so now if I was to click on this and go over to Rhino, I could pick out 3 different curves. And you'll notice it says press enter when done up in the command line up here. So I'll hit that. So now if we were to look here, it says that we have 3 curves defined or picked for that node. And I can play those into the curve, and now we have our geometry. So really quite simple, and we still have editing functionality here. So if I don't like the way a shape is created right now, I can go ahead and manipulate it. And I think it's immediately apparent after using the kind of geometry creation tools that we had inside of Revit, that these are just much more powerful and much more fun to work with. So the next thing we're going to look at is now dividing this off or panelizing it, and we'll do that in the next clip.